And good morning and welcome to Touch Base Daily. My name is Ron Foster and I'm touching base with you as I do every day. And today I am so excited. I am so excited. Today we have the great Jamel Shabazz on our Wisdom Wednesday. And man, I'm just been like, I'm on cloud nine. I have to just tell you, I am on cloud nine. So welcome to our Touch Base Daily on our Wisdom Wednesday, and we are going to have a wonderful time here today, and I'm so excited. So last night, now I'm not going to go too much into anything because I want all of this hour to be for Jamel, and so last night went to the event at ICP in the city, and Jamel's work was on display with a bunch of amazing photographers from around the globe, and it was all focused on street photography. And man, my mind was blown. There were moments I just sat there, I should say stood there, and just looked at the photos, and I was like, wow. Wow, there was one photographer that brought me really way back, and the photographer had these kids on their go-karts. And when I was a kid, my god brother, my neighbors, all of us were young. We used to make go-karts. We used to get that plank of wood, take the shopping carts, take them apart, take the milk crates, saw the milk crates and make the seat, get some cushion, and we made these and get the strings for your steering. It brought back so many memories. I am as I get as I get older, memory is important to me, and being able to retrieve all of those memories make me happy. And because you go down these amazing snowball effect of one thing leading to the next, and you remember so much. And so the same artist had kids climbing the fence. I used to do that. We used to have this place called the Cathedral, which was a preschool on Washington Avenue and Atlantic. And we used to climb that fence to go in to play handball and then climb out, or we would climb in and play football and then climb out. That was our thing. And I mean, like I said, photography is so important because it brings back so much memory. And but not only that, the awesome task of the photographer is to freeze time. And when you freeze time, it is so valuable, not just for the moment, but for every single person that will see that photograph forever as time goes out, as time goes on, generations after generations, that photo. And that's why I consider our jobs as photographers an awesome calling. I've said it before, and I will always say it. It is an awesome calling to be a photographer. Anyway, it's time for some greetings. I just had to get that off my chest. I just had to share it. First person in the building is Hannah. Hannah says, "Good morning, Ron and Jamal. Good morning." And second, for the silver, is Amparo. And she says, "Grand Rising RLP family, Grand Rising Ron and Jamal." And who's the third? Who's the third person in the building? Chrissy's Corner is in the building. Good morning, Chrissy. It is so good to see you in the building. And then we have our Chris R is in the building. She says, "Good morning." Elise is in the building. You know, Elise, our artist extravagant is in the building. Elise. And Kelly A is in the building. Good. It's good to see you all. Okay, so I'm not going to waste any time because this is my brother, Jamel Shabazz time. And we are going to dive in. So I wanted to just share with you guys. Let me just see if I can get this all cued in here, right? And we'll talk about news and all that stuff tomorrow. We're going in. We got a lot to talk about tomorrow. But today, it's all about Jamel Shabazz. Let me take this little Wednesday. You guys know where you are. It's Wisdom Wednesday. I'm going to take that little banner off. You don't need that. And it's the journey and making of a photographer. That's what I ended up titling this. As I have guests on this platform, some guests inspire me to these interesting titles. So, I would have to give a blurb. And this one, Jamel, meeting him, knowing him, and he brought to my attention. We just met in person just slightly less than a year ago. And it feels like we've known each other for a lifetime. I tell you, it's like having a brother, another brother, a big brother that I can like roam around and like check up on and say, what's going on? And being a part is so refreshing and so beautiful. But let's talk. Let me just go into this. Jamel Shabazz is best known for his iconic photographs of New York City during the 1980s, a documentary fashion and street photographer. He has authored 12 monographs and contributed to over 3 dozen other photography-related books. His photographs have been exhibited worldwide, and his work is housed within the permanent collections of the Whitney Museum, the Studio Museum in Harlem, the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture, the Fashion Institute of Technology, I was just there yesterday at FIT, the Art Institute of Chicago, the Getty Museum, the Dean Collection, and the National Portrait Museum, among others. Over the years, Shabazz has taught documentary photography to young students at the Studio Museum in Harlem's Expanding the Walls project, the Schoenberg Center of Research in Black Culture Teen Curators program, and the Bronx Museum's Teen Council. He is the 2023 recipient of the Lucie Foundation Award for his achievement in documentary photography and the 2022 awardee of the Gordon Parks Foundation Steidel Book Prize. As an artist, Shabazz's primary objective is to contribute to the preservation, of world history and culture. Man, so I say all of that. That's a great entry, right? That's a great introduction to an amazing photographer. And I'm so excited because, like I said, I've been following Jamel's work many, many years before I met him. And he was at Photoville several times, and I would see his work, and I was like, who's this guy? Who is this person? And I think that was the first time I really saw his expansion of work and kind of like maybe do some research and look into him. And then he would have these like different talks in different places. And every single time I would try to go to them to meet him, something would pop up. It would be a photo event, or I have to go somewhere, I have to travel, or something would happen. And I would be pissed off. But today we have him. You will have a chance to spend time with Jamel Shabazz. So without any further ado, before I go there, let me share some of the photos, right? Let me go there. Well, that's the man himself. And we're gonna start off right here with this photo and bring Jamel on. What's going on, Jamel?
Hey, Grand Rising family. All right, such an honor and privilege to be on this platform with you, brother, with the family. So Grand Rising family. I appreciate each and every one of you.
It is so good to have you here, man. You are an inspiration. You are, and you inspire many.
Well, thank you, brother. I'm grateful for this assignment in which I've been given, and I'm forever grateful that I even have the ability to see. And with that gift, I'm just trying to bring some good in this world and trying to be a source of inspiration, utilizing just a little bit that I have. And I'm grateful for photography.
Well, and we both have the same philosophy. We believe that photography is a calling.
That's right.
You don't just, some people just want to click a camera and click it and just say, oh, I'm just clicking and taking pictures. But it really is, when you really realize how important photography is to the world. Photography has changed the course of history, in military history, in campaigns, in holidays. Like I do believe that we have, because of the George Floyd protest, someone took a picture, someone was videotaping, others were taking pictures. And then, and so on and so on. You go back and you see the course of history being changed because of photography.
That's right.
And photography, or Tiananmen Square, where the young kid is standing in front of the tanks, or the young girl, I think it is, standing in front of the tanks, rolling in, changed the course of the world. So photography, we have a great calling. So what's going on? What's going on in your world, sir?
Everything is good, brother. I'm just happy for another day of life and purpose. And I'm just striving to the very best of my ability to bring light into this world of, so much darkness. So I'm good. I'm very grateful. I'm humble. I'm thankful for all opportunities to come my way. And I'm really excited to jumpstart my day, engage in conversation with you and your audience.
Well, we always start with some of our audience members. We always have a question that is really off, just somewhere out of the air. And one of them is, a must-have food on a stranded island.
Must-have food.
What must you have if you were on a stranded island and you could have it?
Okay, give me some dates. Dates, I'm good.
Dates?
Yeah, give me some good dates.
Really? I have some dates in my refrigerator.
All right, there you go. All right.
Dates are also great when you make a good smoothie. You put the smoothie, put all the fruit, and then throw the dates in it, because the dates give you that sweetening, and you are off to a good smoothie. Anyway, also, well, we just, and we're just gonna go right in. We're gonna go right in. So, Jamel, how did this journey begin? What was the first moment in your life that drew you to the camera?
I would have to say that it was this one book that really changed my life. And I speak about it in all of my interviews. Black and White America. My father had a signed copy of it on our coffee table in the Red Hook Project during the late 1960s. And it was a really dynamic book of black and white images by Leonard Freed. What drew me to the book was the fact that it was signed. My father had a vast library, and the majority of those books were in his bookcase. But this particular book sat center stage on our coffee table next to our family photo albums. So when I opened it up, I was about 9 years old, and I was captivated by the images in which I saw, because it was the first time I was able to really visually leave my community. I saw Harlem for the very first time. I saw the segregated South. I saw signs of racism, Jim Crow. And this is all new to me, and it really blew me away. So it seemed like this book was tailor-made for me. And it allowed me to see the power of photographs. Prior, I saw my family photo albums that had really dynamic images of family members, but it was something about this book that was introducing me to a world that I was about to embrace. And the fact that it's called Black and White America, and I'm a young black boy, I felt that this was like giving me some insight into the world in which I was going to face. So at that point, I saw the power of photography. It would take many years later that I would physically pick up a camera, but I fell in love with photography as a young child through photography books and various magazines such as Life magazine, National Geographic, and again, the family photo albums. And what I would do as a young child, when I would visit other family members or friends' homes, I would look at their family albums. And I realized at that point the importance of documentation and preserving history. So early on, I'll say from the age of 9 to 15, I fell in love with images. It wasn't until I was 15 years old where I actually picked up my first camera that belonged to my mother. But I have to also say that my father was a professional photographer. So he always had camera equipment in the house. He converted our small apartment in Red Hook into a studio on the weekends, and he would photograph friends and neighbors. So I would watch his process of creativity that also stimulated me.
Wow. I mean, now that's interesting because, you know, I've been on this little journey of discovering Black families and what they do. And I have discovered that there's always been a photographer in most Black families. I mean, there's always been that one person, whether they were professional or just they were just the documentarians, and they would always be the one. Like in my family, it was my aunt, but my grandfather had cameras all over the place, and my father had cameras, and I used to tear them apart really as a child, but anyway, keep them away from the cameras. And but then I was always fascinated by them, you know, like the old open up, like it was like a little, it almost looked like a purse because you just pop it open, and then it had the xylophone, you know, kind of like come out, and I mean, all these different various cameras. And so now your dad was a photographer. How did he get into photography? That obviously you were inspired by him, but how did he get into photography? What was his?
What's interesting, my father joined the United States Navy in 1955 as a 17-year-old kid from Brooklyn.
Wow.
And really interesting, the same year in which Emmett Till was lynched. And to my surprise, my father went to school to become a photographer. And that was a very rarity for Black men during that time, because a lot of times you were limited to jobs of that status. When I look at his photographs, I'm shocked that he's the only Black man in his unit. So he went to the Naval School of Photography, where he learned various aspects of the trade and he mastered it. And then ironically, he was assigned to the USS Intrepid Museum, the aircraft carrier, which is a museum now, and he would document life on that ship during that day and time. And he effectively did it, because I was able to look at his work and I was amazed that he would travel throughout the Mediterranean. And his job was to do aerial photography, but also he documented life on the ship. So that must have been really interesting for a Black man from New York in an institution that's predominantly Southern. And his role was to document life. And he did it very effectively. So it's through that experience that he became a photographer. So he had a trade. So when he came home from the military, he went on to try to establish a photography business early on. And he met a lot of challenges, you know, and it wasn't, he was a starving artist. You know, he wanted to make inroads in that trade. He wanted to open up a studio, but he had a lot of roadblocks. So he would just do a lot of photographs. So like I said, the neighborhood, he would document the families and our family and bring in extra money. He would do a lot of weddings, and he always kept the camera with him. So I just remember my father constantly going out, and he was that one. But I want to go back to something that you said about every family had a photographer, because it's very interesting to note that within my family, that was the same situation. But what was going on during that day and time, mainly the 1940s during World War II, a lot of Black men were being drafted in World War II and the Korean War, and the camera became what the iPhone is today. A lot of guys were traveling for the very first time, so they picked up cameras to document the experience. So when I look back at a lot of my uncles within my family, my grandfather and great uncles, they all had cameras and they documented the experience. So that generation is now gone. But when we look back at our uncles and our grandfathers and maybe the men in other families who were veterans, it was the veterans that helped to bring us back images of the experience. So through my grandfather's photographs, I knew that he was in Burma. Through my uncle's photographs, I realized he was stationed at Pearl Harbor. So they had a lot of albums. And when I would flip them over out of the album, I would see they would be dated from these different countries. So it's very interesting to note the power of those images and holding on to that family tradition, because within my family, the photo albums were passed on from generation to generation, often going to the oldest. And we're losing that right now because so many people going through hardships. A lot of work is being placed in storage, and so much of that family history is being lost. And even
Wow.
if you look at today's society with technology, we rely so much on uploading stuff to, you know, having JPEGs and things of that nature. The family album is being lost. So we have to go back to that, understanding the importance of preserving the history and even interviewing our elders who, if they are still around, to learn more about their journey.
Wow. I mean, woo, that right there, that is power-packed information what you just shared. And my grandfather fought in the Korean War, and he had a camera. That was his thing, was that he documented the camera was his friend. And that's why I guess we gathered that there was so many cameras around because of it. But you kind of like, this is something that goes way back. This is something that's it. Not only are you instinctively a photographer, it's almost it's in your DNA.
It really is. My Uncle Charlie was a photographer also. He lived downstairs from me, and he always had a camera. And what he used to do around family gatherings, he would just photograph everybody. And then once a year around the holidays, like Thanksgiving, he would do a slideshow. And that was a big thing in our house. You know, get together after we ate, put up the screen, and show slides of the family history. And that stayed with me. You know, so yeah, it's deep in my DNA. You know, and I learned to appreciate it early on in my life, starting with the family, and then I just became more curious on other things that was going on. I spoke about the first image I wanted to share in this conversation was a young man laying shot in the street in Newark, New Jersey, and the war in Vietnam. So this really impacted me coming up as a young child too, visually. Looking at Life magazine, because Life magazine back then was the equivalent to the internet today. It's through that publication that we were able to get an idea on what was going on in this country and around the world. So Life magazine gave me life and insight, and it helped me to understand the power of photography. And this is the time in which I'm growing up now. So looking at the book Black and White America and looking at these two images, I look at me as a young Black kid coming up, and kids are being shot. There's rebellions going all over America. There's assassinations going on. There's a war in Vietnam. Men in my community are going to and from Vietnam. So I had a lot of questions, you know, and nobody was really able to answer me. So I found comfort in going to the library and publications to read and enlighten myself to what was going on. And I was pretty much still in my single digits. But these images captivated me and just made me yearn to want to know more. I wanted to know about Vietnam. I want to know about the civil rights movements. I want to know, why was this young kid shot in the street who was a little bit older than me? So it's still the power of photography.
You know what's interesting is that when you think about Life magazine and having this on the cover of a young man shot in the street, America made a decision to, what I call, desensitize the public. And you couldn't find, in today's world, this could not, well, maybe on the internet, but even now, you probably wouldn't even find this on the internet as a story. Most of this kind of photography is hidden from Americans. And not to be political, but we've become more desensitized to war, more desensitized to what's going on in our neighborhoods, more desensitized of what's happening in our communities, because we don't have these photos to tell the stories.
Yeah.
So
I grew up with a lot of this here. So, you know,
yeah,
I'm fortunate during that time that it was there, and it really left a mark on me of curiosity that put me on this journey, to be honest with you. You know, because I want to understand the war in Vietnam. You know, I went to Catholic school and we were taught thou shalt not kill. But meanwhile, you have an active war going on, and it's on television. It's the first live war. So I'm seeing it unfold every day. As a young kid, I'm witnessing men in my community being drafted and going to Vietnam. I remember when a brother got killed in Vietnam, and when the military came to inform its mother. That stayed in my mind. Now I'm 6 years old. When Sam White was killed, it's 1967. Matter of fact, I'm 7 years old, and I'll never forget. We playing Coco Livio, you know, and two military personnel came, and it's like they rolled up to me almost in slow motion, and everybody seemed to have froze when they came through. And they went to this woman's building, Miss White, who lived on the second floor, And all of a sudden, within a matter of minutes, we heard this loud, piercing scream
Wow.
because she was informed that her son died in Vietnam. Now, I didn't understand this until years later. And that pretty
Yes.
much put me on the path to want to know who are these people that were dying in Vietnam. So I started this extensive research to find out. Do you know, just a few years ago, I hooked up with his sister and she explained to me how he died. And I was able
Wow.
to go to the wall in Vietnam and find his name. And that kind of gave me a sense of closure. So I bring that up to say that I'm a 7-year-old child and all this stuff is, I'm ingesting all this here. My parents are not debriefing me on what's going on. So I found comfort in going to the library and doing investigations. And my investigations have been going on for really 40, 50 years. I remember a young brother coming home from Vietnam around 1972. I'm playing football on the grass and I see this guy coming home looking like Fred Williamson. And I froze looking at this guy and I knew it was something special about him. And I knew that he came home from Vietnam. Due to Facebook, I've been able to reconnect with him about 5 years ago. We became good friends, and he went on to explain to me that day he came home and his experience in Vietnam. So the power of having memories. And again, I was traumatized as a kid, and I took all this in, and I held it in for so many years, and I needed answers. So now I've developed great friendships with Vietnam veterans. The same guys I saw go to Vietnam, I might have saw the photographs in publications of men going to the war. Now, after all these years, really, I've been on this project for over 45 years, documenting Vietnam veterans, because I'm trying to understand what was it like to be drafted in the war at 18, 19 years old when Martin Luther King was assassinated. Think about that. And just recently, I spoke about Vietnam because it's a topic that's high on my list because I want answers, because so many Black men were drafted. Many died, others came back broken, and then heroin was there to welcome them. So I was very angry behind it. And I was trying to understand, what was it like to be drafted when King is assassinated, a strong advocate against the war, and he's assassinated. One brother broke down to me not too long ago saying that what I shared caused him to have severe PTSD because he went back to Vietnam. He was there, and he said he found out that King got assassinated because he heard a celebration down in the base and he didn't know what was going on. And he went to investigate what was going on. The white Southerners were celebrating the King, the assassination of King, the federal flag. And that devastated him. And mind you now, you got drafted and you in the war and you're trying to understand it. So I had a lot of questions, and it's through photography, particularly war photography, that gave me a lot of insight into that war and many other wars.
Wow. You also, I don't know if everywhere people know that you also served in the military.
Yeah, I did. And it was a very interesting thing that I did at that time, because I was 16 years old when I decided I got to get out of here. You know, my parents had divorced. I could no longer deal with my photography because I picked up the camera at 15 and I picked up the bass guitar at 15 years old. But when my parents divorced, it was a divide and there was no funding. So I needed something to do. And I started going astray. So the military recruiter came up to the school and he sold me a dream, which I'm glad that he did. The war in Vietnam had just ended, so it was a decent time, but I was still naive. So I realized at 16 I need to get away. So me and my partner, we started to have these conversations, and around my 17th birthday, my mother signed me in, and I got away, you know, and I went into the Army. And
what was your mother's response when you told her that you wanted to go to the military?
She was happy because her brothers had all served, and she didn't understand the magnitude of the war. She was naive to that. My father, being a veteran and going through PTSD, he was going to the VA every week. So he was seeing men coming home from Vietnam. He saw the impact of war. So, and he understood it. So he didn't want me to go in. He was totally against it. And I was naive. I didn't understand the magnitude of war at that time. So I went in. But it was a journey that I needed to go in because it allowed me to get out of the streets of Brooklyn and find my own way. I needed to have that journey to come into manhood. And I'm glad that I did.
Now, when you were in the military, did you, like your dad, take your camera?
Unfortunately, I didn't. The wisdom that he didn't give me at that time, and I'm really surprised that my father never told me to take a camera with you and document your experience. Whatever reason, he never said that to me. Even in his letters that he wrote me, he never said that. And whatever reason, I stopped taking pictures when I went in the military for a moment. I took them occasionally. I got deep into music when I was in the service because now I got my stereo equipment and I fell in love with music. And I didn't really have an interest in documenting military life because I didn't understand it at that point. And that's what really propelled me when I came home, because I regretted not documenting my entire experience in the military,
Wow.
from basic training to the day that I got out of the service. I just didn't do it at that point. I have some really important images, but I didn't do it as much as I wanted to. That's why I'm getting into filmmaking, to go back to that experience and do a movie about my experience in Germany, because I have all the ideas here, all the memories here, and I got to bring that back, because that's to my regret that I didn't document a lot in the service. And, you know, the cameras, it was easy to get a camera in, but I just didn't see the importance of that, because my life was just, I didn't look at it as really being exciting. You know, we stayed in the field, we had weapons, and that didn't really captivate me at that point.
Yes. And now you just hinted on to something that you are working on, that your interest. You had this this amazing career as a photographer, and lots of accolades, lots of accomplishments, and you are now doing somewhat of a pivot, and or maybe a branch. A branch is coming off of what you've been doing as in film. How did this? What triggered you to now think about film and going into film?
To really to create a counter narrative to a lot of the negativity that we are seeing out here.
Mhm.
And nothing is really speaking to my generation, our generation. There's a void there, you know, about movies about the 70s and 80s that don't involve violence.
Mm.
And I want to address a lot of issues, you know, based off really my personal experience. So I've written 3 major movies that have 3 major ideas that have movie potential. And
Mhm.
one of the things I wanted to revisit that's really close to my heart, that's why I did the books first, because to me, the books were prerequisite to movies. So I did
Mm.
back in the days. But one of my important books that I dropped was A Time Before Crack. And I wanted to revisit how life was before the crack epidemic hit, particularly my generation in 1977 in particular, because 77 was a very important year for me. Because what happened, January 1977, Roots came on television, and it created a transformation amongst the community
Yes.
nationwide, even worldwide, those that watched it. And it brought a lot of people into a great sense of consciousness and wanted to know about self. So 77 was a really great year. It's the year I turned 17. I was able to enlist in the military. So I want to go back to that time period of how life was in the 1970s. What's important to note from when I came up in Brooklyn during the days, everybody had a father. If you didn't, more than likely he died in the war. But we
Mm.
all came from structured families. And it wasn't a perfect society, but we had our problems. We had the one Vietnam going on. We had a heroin epidemic, but we still had family, you know, and we had respect for each other. You know, we used words like ma'am and sir, and we weren't using
Yes.
profanity, you know. So I want to revisit that time based off my personal experience in not only a movie, but a miniseries. I look at
Mm.
The Wire and The Corner, and I appreciate both those series that HBO produced, but I want to show and prove that we could produce movies where there's no violence, no negativity, it's love, and it's showing family. It's showing elders imparting wisdom to the youth. It's showing respect, having young people having respect for elders, and all true story. So I feel I got to do that right now, because I'm looking around, and again, there's a void. So I want to address the 1970s, and I want to address my time in the military, because my experience in Germany was a very interesting one, because the Army is a microcosm of society. I'm
Yes.
people from Alaska, from Hawaii, from Alabama, from Mississippi. I'm sharing the same space as Klansmen, as Black Panthers,
Mm.
Vietnam veterans. There's a lot of racism, there's a lot of hatred, there's a lot of divide. And I want to speak about that time, which is oftentimes we don't really talk about what life was in the military, not only for the Army, but the Air Force, and even, you know, hip hop and the culture of being in the military. When you take off your uniform, you got your civilian clothes on in the clubs and the partying and the unity that we had as well. So I want to take my personal experience and turn them into films, because I've done as much as I can photography wise. Next year is going to mark my 50th anniversary, and I have 3 books coming out, and I'm going to continue to do books. But I'm slowly moving forward, moving in the direction of film. I've collaborated with Spike Lee on 2 projects, and he's willing to be my consultant to help me, and I'm happy.
Nice.
So the first project that we're going to work on together, and he will be the executive director, is called Backstories. And what Backstories is going to do is to investigate photographs I took 20, 30, 40 years ago and speak about what's going on in this photograph. So
Wow.
I did it with a young woman over in London, and it was a success. And I'm reconnecting with so many wonderful people due to social media now, due to Instagram,
Yes.
Facebook, and now they're telling me the backstories behind every photograph, because every single picture, there's a backstory beyond what anyone could ever believe. I'm even shocked daily when people write me and say, that's my brother, that's my cousin. And let me tell you the story behind that photograph. So I want to do a series called Backstories. It has a lot of wings. It's in its development stage right now. And it'll take my craft to the next level.
You know, you mentioned about backstories. I remember you telling the story about I think we were sharing, we were talking, and you mentioned this to me, or you may have mentioned it to one of your work, areas that you were presenting, and you were talking about a gentleman who that came across his picture. I think it was a gentleman that came across his picture, and he was upset. And then you were able to create a friendship with this gentleman, and I think someone had passed away, or I forgot how the story went. But you have this ability, and I've seen it when you did one of your book. You were sharing at the book book writing, books signing, and you had a family there that you took a picture of years ago, and here they were in the space. What is that like to have these moments where you photograph people in this journey, and then later on 10, 20, 30, 40 years later, you are now encountering them because they picked up a book, or they may have saw something and say, oh my gosh, that's my mom, that's my cousin, and then they reach out to you. What is that like?
It's a really wonderful feeling, because it allows me to see that this thing has come full circle. And in many cases, when I take photographs, in my mind, I'm saying, and even in my conversations with people I photograph, it may not make sense now, but it's going to make sense later. And in a lot of situations later on, it really does. Because now, 20 years from now, 20 years past, and that young person that you with in that photograph has passed away. Like, I just posted on my Facebook page a really interesting story that a brother just texted me last year, and he's in my book albums, my good friend Terrell. And he said to me, he says, yo, Jamel, thank you for putting me and my man Ramel in your book. He died, and we don't have no pictures together. And then Tyrell died a few months later. You know what I mean? So here, this brother, a good friend of mine, is so elated that he's in my book with his best friend. He never saw the picture before. He wrote me to tell me how happy he was in seeing the photograph. And a few months later, he passed away. So it means a lot to so many people. And I'm so grateful for Instagram, because I'm able to put these images on my feed, and I have my interpretation of what they mean to me. But when I put them out there, people are writing now saying, that's me. There's a sad story that I speak about a lot, of the father with his two sons, downtown Brooklyn. One has on a shirt, don't worry, be happy. Brothers crouched down, two sons, twins. The daughter wrote me and said, that's my father, and those are my two brothers, and both my brothers got murdered. Years apart, they were both murdered, and my father's brokenhearted. Now, I never exchanged numbers with the brother. I took the picture. He never saw the photograph, but somehow his daughter was on my page, and as she's going through my page, she comes upon a picture of her father and two brothers, and ironically, both of them got murdered, and they were just maybe in their single digits at that time. So every single photograph is a story. Even the cover of my book, A Time Before Crack, which I passed on to you, that was a good friend of mine. When I came home from the Army, me and him connected. He lived around the corner from me, and he was a really vibrant young brother with a lot of hopes and dreams. But unbeknownst to me, prior to coming home from the service, he was at war with a lot of people in the neighborhood, and a lot of people were after him. And I didn't know that side of him. I saw his heart, and I saw a good brother. But then I had other friends that he had conflict with, and every time they would see each other, they would shoot each other. And mind you, now these guys are coming to my house in the afternoon. He's on the corner. And we talking about a war that was taking place months before I came home from the Army. And then later on in the evening, I had another crew that would come visit me. They had beef with them, because of an allegation. So I realized this is beyond photography for me. This has to become street ministry. And I got to engage people in conversation to find out what's going on. Because if this is a song to reflect what I was feeling when I came home from the military, it's Marvin Gaye's song, What's Happening, Brother. Because when I came home during the summer of 1980, there was a war going on in the streets. And I was heartbroken behind that because, again, I left around roots where it was about love and unity. Now I'm coming home and there's a lot of division and hatred. So
Wow.
that's what it took me to take to the streets, because it was about engagement. The photograph became evidence of the conversation. What was more important for me was to connect with you. And then I photographed you as a part of my visual diary to remind me that I did my job, because it just wasn't about getting the photograph. I want to speak with you. I want to remind you that, brother, sister, it's nation time. We got to build. We have to love one another. We have to think towards the future. So I always try to plant a seed. And to my surprise, those seeds resonated with a lot of people. So 20, 30, 40 years now, a lot of brothers and sisters reach out to me and they tell me about that. And even with the photograph, I would give it out as a gift. And brothers would tell me that my mother still has that picture that you gave me 40 years ago and what it meant to me. So it's about building friendships with people beyond what I could ever imagine in taking the photographs. And a lot of people held on to my card. They took me on as a big brother because they knew that my intentions were sincere. Yes. Again, it wasn't about photography. It was about trying to build bridges and trying to eradicate a lot of the self-hatred that was ever present during that time. And what's interesting to note, we're talking about two things that happened in America, in New York in particular, in the early 80s.
Yes.
AIDS epidemic and the crack epidemic. So it was a race against time for me as a young man, a student of the Black arts movement, to use my voice and platform to reinvigorate the power of the Black arts movement and be proactive out there in the streets.
Wow. You, and I noticed that about you. You know, a lot of folks, they create photos and they hope to sell them for big prices and put, you know, big numbers on them and make a fortune in their photos. You are so opposite. You love just taking pictures, putting them in their, you know, in their matting and put them in a wrapping, and you will just give things away. You give books away. You give photos away. You operate in a different space when it comes to connecting with people. Where does that come from? I know you're driven by connecting with people, but where does that come from inside of you that you are wired to be such a giver?
I was raised under the idea of I want for my brothers, I want for myself. And I really believe that. I want to see everybody rise around me. So I want to encourage people. So that's why I like to give, because giving is like planting a seed. If I pass on a book to you, that book might now inspire you to want to become a photographer. You know, I give a print to you, it inspires you to collect. I want to help elevate people around me because, again, I want to see everybody win. And I try to fill the void in my life. Or I have to say that the brothers, the older brothers that inspired me, the only thing they wanted in return for me to go back and do good deeds. So I'm a firm believer in the importance of doing good deeds all the time, you know, to try to help people elevate. Even when I do sell prints in museums or institutions, I try to give back to the community. I look at that as a trade-off where whatever funds I get off the sales and the imagery now, I could support organizations like the Student Museum in Harlem, ICP and other organizations. But it's about just doing good deeds every day. And that's very important for me. You know, each day I try to find what type of good deeds can I do? What type of joy can I bring into this world to make it a better place? So it's just a part of my heart and my process. Yes. And I think that has contributed to some of my success in connecting with people.
Wow. I have, speaking of books and giveaways and all that stuff, and so many people are asking about your books and asking about things here. And I have several of them because I am a big fan of Jamel. So I have all these books here, and some he's also given to me. And this one is we all have our favorites. He has his favorites. I have my favorites, and there's so many. So I'm just going to take you through them. This one's called Pieces of a Man. This one, for every Black brother, just every man. It really doesn't matter what color you are, but it really is special for Black men, but men in general. This book is just so powerful. Every page is about relationships and sharing, and it's just so much in it. And it's so much history as well. And this is one of my favorites. I have to always say one of my favorites. I can't ever say with Jamel's books is a favorite. Then there's this other book here, and this one's called The Albums. And this, I have this thing, like I mentioned, is because my mom has dementia. I've been on this mindset of saving and preserving my memories. And I find that, and when I first met Jamel in person, I said, your books, the stuff that you create, it helps me to recollect all of the things that happened in my past, or it takes me back to these places, and it triggers all these amazing memories. And I am a believer. I don't know if there's any scientific facts on this, that these books like this that document history, and for me documents my history, they are priceless, because they ignite memories that have been maybe long lost. So you may have forgot about a memory, and then you go across one of these pages and you're like, oh my gosh, I remember that ad. I remember we used to dress that way. I remember those glasses. I remember those jeans. And your brain starts going down this road of like recapturing memories. And so this is another book. It's called Albums. Check that out. And Jamel, I know folks are saying, where can they get your books from? We'll go dive into that in a moment. But here's another one: A Time Before Crack. Wow. This one is really good. This is my autographed copy here. And this is the one that Jamel gifted to me. And it is a powerful book. I love this. And also, this is the book. It's called Back in the Days. And this is the book that started it all. Now, Jamel, could you talk to us about how this book played a very important foundation in what you do today?
That's a good question. The idea of that particular book came around 1999, and it started on a conversation with one of my coworkers. And we both grew up during the same time period. We used to reminisce about back in the days, the Lancashire Street, the Pumas, the Adidas, the attitude, the culture. And we always just was reflecting on that time period. And then I started looking at a lot of the magazines, such as Source, Vibe, and I felt there was a void. A lot of those publications dealt with a lot of stars, but I wasn't seeing images of real people. And at the same time, I thought about the impact that the crack epidemic had on that generation. And at that time, I was working in the jail. I spent 20 years in the Department of Corrections, and a lot of brothers were coming in the system broken. Many fell victim to crack. So I felt that I needed to put a book out that will serve as a form of visual medicine and remind people of a very different day and time. So I went through a lot of my photo albums and I dissected them and put them into a body of work. And I went to my publisher. I just happened to go to Powerhouse, no invitation or anything. And I shared them the work, the title, and the idea I had. And to my surprise, they told me that we will do your book and it'll be out next year. And I was blown away. I went in 2000 and I shared the work. And they said, we've been looking for work like this here. Because I would go to a lot of bookstores and it was a void. I never saw anything that really reflected Brooklyn or New York from the 70s and 80s. And I felt I had something. And I spent a lot of time in the galleries in Soho. And there was a void. So I really believed that I had something. So I connected with my publisher. They looked at the work. They said the book would come out a year. On September or late September of 2001, the book dropped. It sold out in 6 months, the first edition. The second edition sold out in 2 weeks. And now, over 20 years later, the book is in its 22nd edition. So that one basic book, no Photoshop, just basic images taken out of a photo album, went on to be a book that put me on the map. And through that book, I was able to get, commercial jobs now. And I was on the radar of a lot of people. So that book really put me on my career path. And I was taken aback because I always said to myself, I have even deeper work. That's
Yes.
just hitting the surface. So, I'm grateful for Powerhouse for what they've done for me. And now they're publishing my new book that comes out in spring of 25 called Drama and Flavor. So I still have a relationship with the publisher. They believe in my vision. It's one of the few places I can go to with an idea, and they will greenlight it. So I'm very thankful to that publication. I'm grateful for all the people that stood in front of my lens over the years and allowed me to photograph them, because I owe it to them as well. It's not about me. It's about honoring them to say that I'm not just making these images for me, but I want to put them in a book form so you can have them, so you can share with your children, so they could become conversation pieces. So it's my way of contributing to the preservation of our history and culture through my work. And that one book has kind of like really helped me out in so many ways.
Wow. I mean, you always tell me the power of the book. The first he gave me one thing. He said, Ron, get a book, brother. Get a book. And I'm still working on putting something together, putting some pieces together. But I'm gonna have to hang out with Jamel and just watch him kind of like put it together so I can learn. Because I've ran into other book creators, and you just don't wake up and roll out of bed and make a book. It requires so much. But what's interesting though is that, Jamel, you put together that your first book has gone around the globe. It has gone to, and it's been put into so many hands. So many people have discovered it through, in a bookstore or a library or online, or someone handed it to them as a gift. You and like you said, you've done incredible work. You have an incredible body of work, but yet this first book was so simply made, and yet it has so much traction. And so sometimes I think in our world of, when I think about photography, I'm always sharing with folks, guys, don't get so caught up in the equipment. Don't get caught up into the technicals. Don't get caught up into all these other things, because some of the most magical moments in life are the things that are very simple. They're just the simplicity of it all. So where do you see yourself? I mean, let's go through some of your photos real quick. So I create a presentation here, and anytime you want me to stop and you want to share a story behind it,
Sure.
feel free to do so, because I want people to see your work. I mean,
That's an interesting photograph right there. That's a picture taken on Rikers Island. And that's in 1983, I became a correctional officer. When you come out of the military, my father told me to consider a city or federal job. So I applied for a number of city positions. I was young. Corrections called me first. I felt it was my assignment. So I carried my camera in the jail. From the moment I was called to the day I retired, I had my camera with me, and I wanted to document my experience. Being I missed that opportunity in the military, I didn't want to be without memory during my time in corrections. These gentlemen here are in my housing area. These are all adolescents, 17 to 19 years old. And I was with them for a matter of 8 to 16 hours a day.
wow.
I used that position to try to be a light. And I wanted people to see what jail looks like. This is not, we look at jail and prison today, we see orange jumpsuits. But back in the days of Rikers Island, you were able to wear civilian clothes. And these are all official brothers. This is pretty much Brooklyn. I see Brownsville, Bed-Stuy, and Coney Island. And these were young men that I was assigned to guide and direct. And they were official, and I photographed them during my time. So this is a very interesting photograph that no one would ever know was jail. And it's the first time I'm showing it, because I really don't show this particular body of work because it's close to me. A lot of people have changed their lives, so they don't want to be reminded of the past. But it's just an image to give people some insight into my assignment, and the fact that I would do this for 20 years. And every day I went to work with the desire of saving lives, as many lives as I could. And when I look at these guys here, I just think about that time. So this photograph is very important to me. It was taken with a Polaroid camera.
Wow. It's the power of the Polaroid.
And the pose is important too, because the pose was, pose was making it fun.
Yes, I love the poses.
But the pose, that's why my book's called Drama and Flavor. Those are two elements that to me make a really good photograph. back in the days, I would approach people to take their photograph. They wouldn't know what to do, so I would have to pose them. So posing became a part of the creative process, adding flavor to the image.
Wow.
This is a very important photograph of mine. This is my running partner back in days, Malik. And this picture is important because he passed away last year. Good friend of mine, military man, you know, and we used to roll together hard back in the days of Brooklyn to Washington, D.C., Virginia. And he was on leave from the Marine Corps at this point. And I want, again, the drama and the flavor. You know what I mean? The flavor is Malik, the way he's dressed. The drama is what's going on in the background. This is the 1980s. You have a sign, Reaganism is Black genocide. We think about 2025, Project 2025, and what's going on in this country and Trump. But what was going on for us back then was Reagan and the war on Black people, the war on drugs, crack, AIDS. There was a lot going on. So I wanted to convey that, because one of the things that I would do in my image making, I created images that I would put in my portfolio that I would carry around that would continue the conversation. So as I do my lectures, or as I'm engaging young brothers on the street with my work, I would show them images like this here to make them think. So this photograph is very important in my visual storytelling. And now the fact that Malik is gone physically, but the spirit exists within this photograph right here.
You know, it's also, you speaking of Reagan, people don't realize that the Heritage Society began during the Reagan years. And so Project 2025, the prequel is Reagan.
That's
the Reagan years.
This is a powerful photograph right here, beyond what anyone could ever imagine. I call it bittersweet. And a lot of people look at this picture and they like it, but they don't understand the essence behind this image and what I went through. Even as I look at it right now, it's it's one of my most painful images in my collection. The brother in the center is a pimp, and both women are prostitutes working. I don't know who the little boy is. I first met the young lady on the left in a very negative situation. This is on the Lower East Side. I'm walking and with one of my partners, and she's engaged in a sex act with a religious figure.
Wow.
And I'm about to cross the street, and I had my camera out and I shot it. She screamed, the guy pulled off. The guy in the center rolled up on me with about maybe 4 or 5 of his associates, put us in like a half circle. I got into a defensive position with my partner, and I told the brother, wait a minute. And I started to explain to him who I was and my intentions. And he heard something within my voice. They was ready to fight us. And I'm not going to say they had the upper hand, but it was a very hostile situation.
Yes.
And, you know, and I said something and it caught his attention. And I told him, because at that time I was documenting prostitution. It was an ongoing project that I embarked on, trying to get women off the street. So it was something close to my heart. That's why I would take that route on Orchard Street to go down to Lansky Street. I would go by this park because it was going on constantly. It was a hotel on the block, and I used to see these beautiful sisters selling themselves, and it devastated me. So he heard the way I spoke, and he said to me, I like you. You know, I like you. And he gave me permission to document that world. And he said, you have my permission to document it. And through him allowing that, I was able to go back and document that world for a number of years. And I developed friendships with some of the sisters. So, you know, the sister on the left, like I said, I caught her in that act, and it really bothered me. And I didn't like pimps, but he taught me a lesson too. And a lot of pimps, we don't want to do it because I started to interact with pimps during my travels. And they had a way with them. And he taught, what he showed me helped me in my photography, because as I continue to move on, I would see them, they would shake my hand and they would say to me like, how you doing, brother? Good to see you, man. You looking good, brother. Everything's good. They appear to have a genuine concern for me. And I learned from that when you engage people you want to photograph or have conversations with, be sincere and genuine, compliment them, embrace them. And that stayed with me.
Yeah, so you use that to this day. You'd use that to this day. Every scene I've seen you've done that. It's remarkable.
And I've learned that from him. So this is a very interesting picture. Again, it's called Bittersweet. And to this day, I always wonder who was that boy and what happened to him. Because that was to me, is one of the worst things I've seen in my life, to see women sell their bodies. And I saw it a lot through my life. And one of my goals was to go and engage women. And to my surprise, one of my friends told me his grandfather worked in that hotel. And he said, because of my actions, a lot of women got off the street.
Wow. His I call it the collection of the elites.
This is a great
These are beautiful photos.
opportunity. This was a great opportunity. It was given to me by a friend of mine who was one who appreciated my work, and he invited me on the set of the Godfather of Harlem, that series on FX, and I
Yeah.
couldn't believe it. You know, and it went against policy of the film set, but he wanted me to come on and document a lot of these heavy hitters. So it was one of the most joyous moments of my life to connect. And I'm not one to shoot stars, but I was happy to be on the set of a retro movie, you know, based off 1964. So to go back into time on this film set and document these individuals was one of the highlights. So I really appreciate working on set. I built up an incredible body of work that will all be in my new book coming out, Drama and Flavor.
Wow. And
one of the greatest personalities I photographed, beautiful human being, Dapper Dan. And this is a really great moment. It was a collaboration between him and Slick Rick, where we went to Dapper's spot. Slick Rick had his jury, and he wanted Dapper to
I
wear.
noticed that. That's a Slick Rick necklace, neck chain.
Yeah, so it was something. It's a way you will probably never see Dapper Dan. So I was able to connect with him and photograph him and build a relationship with Dapper Dan, because I look at him beyond a fashion person. I look at him as a historian, and we've had really deep conversations about history and culture of Harlem and his struggle. You guys get a chance, pick up his book. It's an incredible read about his journey coming of age, but a really wonderful man. And I could say one of my highlights of my career was photographing Dapper Dan and developing a relationship with him.
Yeah, his story is remarkable. I saw his story on Channel 7 with Sandra I think Sandra Bookman. Yeah, she did a little piece on him. It's an incredible story.
And just the streets. This represents my start in photography. My father instructed me, because one of the things that happened when I came home from the Army, I'm home now with a Canon AE1 camera, and I'm really want to get into photography. And my father told me to photograph the streets. I wasn't initially impressed with that idea, because I want to engage people. I want to photograph my friends. A lot of the portraits and what you see in my work is really my early work of what I really like to do, because it was engagement. It's about saving lives. But my father told me to shoot the streets. And I'm glad that I took his advice, because as I look at the work, I can't believe what I'm finding. I just rediscovered this image a few years ago, and I was blown away with it because of so much time has changed. And you have the old cars, you got the old buses, and it was a basic picture to me. It had no meaning. But now after 40 years, it has so much, and I have so many images like this here. I started shooting a lot of black and white. A friend gave me an enlarger where I did my own developing, and I was able to build up a really incredible body of work. A lot of it, one of the things that my father gave me too, which is important for those inspiring photographers coming up, is having themes. He said, you gotta have themes. And the idea of themes are now converted into books, because all of the books I'm producing are rooted in themes. Streets of photography, fashion, Prospect Park, downtown Brooklyn, Lower East Side, different themes. This theme is under street photography. And I'm really happy with this photograph, because it means a lot to so many people, because it's a different day and time now.
Well, this picture, when I saw this picture, when I was putting it into and when you sent it to me, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember those buses. And I remember people getting on the back of them and riding them, and their hands would be stuck in the window. And it was a mess when we were growing up. But, you know, I mean, obviously I was a baby at 1964. I was just born in 1964. But these buses were out for a long time after. And man, what a scene. This is, I love history. So these pictures mean the world to me.
This is a part of a theme that I worked on for a number of years too, fathers and sons. So it's an ongoing theme, been doing for about 45 years now. That's a good friend of mine, and his son, he was a photographer, and we used to hang out in the Albee Square Mall. So that's just the two of them meeting up after school every day, which they would do a ritual. And I was able to photograph them. So it went on to be one of my most iconic photographs of a father and son in the early 1980s.
Wow. I remember Albee Square Mall. Woo! That was when we hung out after school. This photo here.
This is one of my recent images, and this happened around 2019 when COVID first hit. And this young guy was at a photo shoot I was at, Franklin Myrtle. And he rolled up like that. And it's like, yo, this is crazy right here. When people started wearing masks and
And the
COVID,
shields.
there was a lot of uncertainty about COVID. And he came with the flavor. And I just knew that this would be a really incredible image. So I captured it. It showed in the Bronx Museum. It's going to go in my drama and flavor book because it got the elements of a good image. You got the drama, you got the flavor. So this is just some of the new work that I've been doing. And I love fashion. This is at the Dave Chappelle block party in 2008. And Dave Chappelle, whatever reason, I got a phone call from Dave Chappelle and he wanted me to shoot the block party. And I was like shocked behind that.
Wow.
And he gave me full access. So this photograph is of Mos Def, Yasin Bey performing. And I was just, it's one of my most iconic photographs now in regards to hip hop. You know, I have respect for Mos Def. His song Umi Says really reflects what's in my heart. That's my national anthem. And I appreciate having been able to freeze this moment in time, you know, in some of my newer work. So hopefully one day I'll do an exhibition based off this block party, because I have a really intense body of work of the Roots, Big Daddy Kane,
Wow.
Lauryn Hill, Common, Kanye,
Wow.
so many from that day. You know, really incredible event. But this is my number one photograph from that day.
I love this photo. I love the angles. I love how he's the major presence as you look up, and then you see the hands going up and all the lines. And this is a really beautiful photo.
Thank you.
Overalls and those big baggy overalls.
And this is the project I'm working on too, which I have a lot of ongoing projects, and this is a part of a series called The Other Side. And the other side is photographing people from the back versus the front.
Wow. I remember these. I remember.
In Fort Greene Park at that too.
Yeah, Fort Greene Park. That's our park.
This is a deep photograph right here. This is a young man who was 16 years old on Rikers Island, and he was faced with 30 years. And he actually did 30 years in prison. So imagine 16 years old. So I'm in a position where I have to try to enlighten these young men. And what's so beautiful about it, we connected about 4 or 5 years ago on Instagram, and he's changed his life. He's giving back to the community right now. He even told me that he used to remember seeing me on the street and he would go the opposite way because they were involved in a lifestyle that they embraced, and he wasn't ready for change at that point. But I had him in jail, and I would mentor him constantly, and he was just a really good brother. And I was surprised to know that he did 30 years in prison. And while he was upstate, he changed his life, and he went on to mentor other young men who were incarcerated. So a really great story. But how could you work in an environment and not engage these young men? There was so many around me. I witnessed countless young men doing 20, 30 years, and it was very painful to me. And that's what made me push hard going in the street. See, what people don't realize is that the majority of my photographs in the 1980s and 90s was made when I was going to and from Rikers Island. And after I'm leaving this very violent, negative, hostile environment, I'm going into the streets looking for joy and love. And at the same time, I'm trying to inform young people of where I'm coming from. I'm letting them know, you look, Rikers ain't the place to be. I'm just coming from there because the crack epidemic hit. A lot of people were falling victim to both using it and selling it. And it seemed fair seeming to a lot of people. So it was a race against time for me to try to save lives. So I used my personal experience whenever the time was appropriate to let people know where I was coming from. And then I would take pictures from the outside and bring them into the jail. And I would let people look at what freedom looked like. And my books and my images made a big difference for guys that were doing 20, 30 years in prison. Because now you ain't coming home no time soon. So when my books and the publications reached the facilities, it caused them to reminisce in so many ways. So
20 and 30 years
was for really incarcerated people as a form of visual medicine. Even as you thumbing through the pages of my book, you come upon a picture of a person that you murdered over some nonsense.
Man, wow. Whew, that's deep.
This is a deep picture because, you know, again, we look at what's going on in this country today. This is 1980. And this is when I started to shoot the subways. That was another major theme of mine for about 40 years, the subway system. And I focused on the graffiti, you know, both the people and the graffiti, every element of the subway. But I remember seeing this, and I just came home from the Army now. So I'm looking at this here, and it's let me know the type of world that I'm faced with. Stop Koch's Killer Cop. For those that don't know, Koch was the mayor of New York at that time.
Yes.
So just like we speak about racism now and the Ku Klux Klan and the police department, this is 1980. So things haven't changed at all.
Yeah, things are pretty much the same in a lot of ways. Oh,
And this is an idea I had to just capture love. The subject, and again, the idea, drama, and flavor. The subject by himself is fine, but when you have the sign that says "Love me," it becomes
yes.
visual poetry and it speaks for itself. So you have a dapper young man, Harlem, "Love me." The lighting is not all good; it's just a raw image, but it helps to tell the story too. And it brings me great joy to share these images around the world to create that counter narrative of Black people that we don't often see.
Hmm.
This is a very interesting photograph. I spent 10 of my 20 years as a correction officer working in a mental facility. I work with the criminally insane. So this is my area when I worked at 100 Center Street Supreme Court. And this is a young man who was battling mental illness. And I had a lot of that. That was very troubling to me, to see such an influx of people who are coming in, due to illnesses and how they were being treated within the system. I
Wow.
tried my very best to help them. I would bring them cologne and put cologne on them, give them a sense of pride. I would burn incense. I would bring in reading material. I would play jazz. I had plants on my post. I did my very best. Many
Wow.
times they were heavily medicated, and it was very terrible. The food enhanced their condition. It's very troubling to me. So this is a photograph I took outside the cell of a gentleman that was going through a really deep crisis, and I felt that I couldn't put him in the cell. I tried to do
Yes.
whatever I could to help him, but he was really far gone, and there's nothing I can do other than sit him down and just let him go through whatever he's going through.
Wow.
And homelessness is something I focus on early on too, because we live in the richest country in the world, but yet you have so much poverty and pain. And I thought the irony of this image, you have a individual outside of a Holiday Inn with the gate down. So
Yeah.
work that I want to do just to provoke thought and to address social issues. So my work, it varies, from fun portraits to reality. And it's an even balance between the two. And I was on my lunch break just walking around my camera and I came upon this scene. I just felt that it becomes a talking point.
It also, this is one of those, think of visual poetry. I
Yes.
mean, it's the Holiday Inn, the gate is down, it's closed, the gentleman is on the ground, no place to go. It's so much poetry there.
And this is interesting too, because again, I'm just back home from the military and I'm looking at the sign. So you see, death to KKK, stop the black animal. And now you have a woman off to the right. She's walking away, and then you have a black woman and a white woman involved in conversation with each other. So this is how my eye was developing. And this is what my father pretty much taught me how to see. And I think that this came from looking at the work of Leonard Freed, where this
Mhm.
story is going on. You have an unposed image and you catching a real situation. And I just happened to freeze this right here, and it reflected the time that we were living in. Because I would see these signs all over, "Death to KKK," and I was wondering who was writing them. And then it appeared to me that there's a good chance that white racist cops are writing this because they have access to the subway system. But I found it very troubling that I'm stepping into America and all this is going on in the
Wow.
early 1980s.
Yeah, this is DeKalb Avenue. This is the DeKalb station. And I love this photo.
This is a very powerful image of mine, and it represents sisterhood. And it's a part of my new project, which I'm really excited about. I'm finalizing my Prospect Park book. It's entitled Prospect Park, My Oasis in Brooklyn. Prospect Park has been a space throughout my entire life that I went to heal. But particularly when I came home from the military, I spent a lot in that park because it reminded me of the time in the field. And at the same time, it allowed me to connect with so many people that were seeking inner peace. What I found in this park, regardless of your color or cultural background, most people went there as an escape from the concrete and
Yes.
seeking joy and serenity. So I found that as a photographer, that was an ideal place to document. So I've documented for a number of years. It's my most dynamic, diverse body of work. And I'm really grateful that the publishing company reached out to me early this year, and they were looking for ideas that I had, and I presented my Prospect Park body of work, and they immediately greenlit it and said, "We're going to do this book." So it's in its final stages right now.
Wow.
It's a really beautiful body of work. It's a place that I would leave Rikers Island to. I would leave Rikers Island and go here to heal, to just be around nature, to be away from the concrete, to be around just people who are seeking inner peace. And I have to say, it's helped me with my process to to heal over the many years. So this book will be coming out spring of 2025. And again, it's called Prospect Park, My Oasis in Brooklyn, photographs from 1980 to 2025.
You know I am getting this book because Prospect Park means so much for many of us who grew up here in Brooklyn. I used to literally ride my bike around Prospect Park, even though we used to be afraid of getting our bike stolen, but we still just went. We still did it, and we used to go and do the back trails and do mountain biking on the back trails. And man, I have so many amazing memories of Prospect Park, and there's so much history there as well.
Yeah.
And I can't wait.
And this is a very interesting photograph right here. This is deep. I don't even know where to begin with this one. I was documenting the gay parade, and a young woman approached me, and she says, "Jamel Shabazz." I says, "Yeah." She says, "I read about you when I was in Afghanistan in the army." I said, "You in the army in Afghanistan?" She says, "Yeah, I'm active. I actually came here to meet you because I know you document parades, and I was hoping to see you." Wow. I couldn't believe it. She said, "This is my sister. She's in the army too." So we started talking, and she wasn't familiar with the movie Fahrenheit. Wow, it's been a long time. It was Fahrenheit, Michael Moore's movie.
1, 2, 3, or 3. Something. Yeah, Fahrenheit 1, 2, 3, or something. Yeah.
So she didn't know about that. She was gung ho, pro-military, and I'm looking at this beautiful woman just got from Afghanistan and pro-military the whole nine, and I decided that I have to educate this sister. Beautiful. And I decided, and I can't believe I did this. I got her a train ticket and a hotel and her sister, and we met in Arlington Military Cemetery in Washington, D.C. And I wanted her to see the graves of the soldiers that were dying in Iraq and Afghanistan. I don't know where this idea came from because it was very traumatizing. So I had her put on her uniform. It's a really interesting sequence of images that led to this photograph right here. So she put a uniform on. She met me in the cemetery, and we're walking through the cemetery as I'm documenting her, looking at these fresh graves of soldiers that died in Iraq and Afghanistan. Fahrenheit 9/11. Thank you, Anthony. Deep movie, deep movie. You know what I mean? So as we are there looking at these graves, a van came, and this family came out of the van. And I'm blown away because they're Muslim. So as they made their prayer, I had to figure out, how do I go about getting this image? This is a very important photograph. I gotta get this image. So I approached him in a humble way, and I engaged him in conversation. I told him the importance of this photograph. They let me photograph him. The father was one that was on, he used to be on CNN a lot, talking about his son that died, a Muslim, Khan.
Oh, this is really?
The Democratic convention, he was there of the war. So I got this photograph. But what's so amazing about this image, Ron, that blew me away, I researched all of the names of the people that are dead around here. And not only did I research the names, I went back to their funerals, and they were all listed online. On the far left is a Buddhist. An Asian Buddhist. You see the symbol on that?
Yes, on the top.
In the front, you have a black Christian and a white Christian. And it blew me away. And I had to take this image to tell the story of war and suffering. And when we think about suffering, we think about this American. But here you have, not only was he a Muslim Khan, but he was a captain in the United States Army. And we don't speak about the Muslims that died. So this image is twofold. It's dealing with a lot of elements here. This is actually visual poetry. You deal with those that died in a senseless war. You have a Muslim that died, a Muslim family that mourning as well. And you have, like I said, within this space, you have a black Christian, a white Christian, a Muslim, and a Buddhist. So this photograph is really deep for me. It's a political image. And, one of the things that happened when after 9/11, because I was impacted by 9/11, and, I was there, and I knew the war was going on. So I got really heavy into the anti-war movement and documenting the anti-war protests, both in New York and DC. So I was going down there a lot, using my craft to address the issue of war. And that's the body of work that you see in Pieces of a Man. But that was very important to me. And this image is really important because I want to continue that conversation with all that's going on now. So I don't really talk about this photograph a lot, but I'm glad I had an opportunity to get into it. But it amazed me when I researched those names and the impact that it had on those two sisters, because they broke down and cried. And then at that point, they understood the magnitude of the war that they was in.
Man, you are sharing. I mean, this is we're going to just continue on. What is this here going? What's
This is
going
at
on here?
the funeral of the great Queen Mother Moore, who was a community activist in Harlem, a very strong voice. We all need to study Queen Mother Moore, strong advocate, that was lending her voice to address civil rights in America. And she was very proactive in the struggle when she passed away. Dynamic woman, very compelling woman that was all about the love of the community. And I went to her funeral and documents. So this is a part of the procession that day. And I want to just honor her memory by recording this particular funeral right here. So it's in Harlem. I believe it's I can't remember the exact year. It might have been 1997.
Wow.
This is a very powerful photograph.
This image gets me every time I see it. And now I get to hear the story. Proceed.
It's called Church Lady. And I was invited by a magazine that was it came out of Essence magazine, and it's called Suede. And this is their first issue. And they invited me to photograph in the spirit of James Vanessy. And it's supposed to be an outdoor photo shoot, but it rained for like 3 days in a row.
Wow.
And there was no place to go. So the creative director was able to get us into the National Writers Club in Gramercy Park. And he had to connect. And he got us in this classic building. And I was able to photograph them in the spirit of James Vanessy. And it's called Church Ladies. And all these women come from different churches in the tri-state area. They didn't even know each other. And I was able to photograph them collectively and photograph them individually. And it's a very important photograph of mine because it represents the other title of it is called Culture and Refinement. And this is the image that's necessary to create that counter narrative, because many of our women are under attack right now. And we feel that we have to look a certain way to be acceptable in society. But here you have these beautiful women of God who are represented. So for me, this image is very important to show to the world. And it's in a lot of my exhibitions, because I want people to see this other side, and it's a very important photograph of mine. I have a lot of them too. There's so many variations.
I love this photo.
What I try to do when I photograph groups, I make everybody feel special, and I take everybody to the side and photograph them individually at the same time too. So you get the group shot, you get the individual shot, so everybody equally feels special.
Wow. I was going to go back. Kelly says, love this one. Reminds me of the woman in my church growing up. It's so Kelly, because I'm a PK growing up in church, and I've seen church ladies most of my life, and some of the church ladies used to dress with such elegance and such refinement and such beauty, and this was their time to show off, not in a prideful way others and lack of humility, but this ability to be able to say, I'm going to go worship God in my best. And they really felt this passion of showing off this beauty in the presence of God. And it used to always fascinate me as a kid that the women and the men, but the women, they went all out, and they always looked like they were going to the presidential ball every Sunday. And it was just something to see that elevation of what women used to do and still do in some circles. But it's almost becoming a lost art, and it is something that is missed dearly. I'll go to the next one.
Wow, this is based off a dream I had, and I wanted to address gang violence. And when I retired, I was being invited to go into a lot of schools, and I needed to reach young people that were caught up in gang culture. When I first retired in 2003, I got all these invitations to these schools at risk, and a lot of the kids were gang affiliated. So I needed to showcase images that got the attention. So I had this dream, because I'm a chess player, and I teach chess as a form of conflict resolution strategy. So I came with this idea to have a blood and crip on a chessboard, and not your traditional chessboard, but a black and red one. And the red represents the blood that has been spilled, and the black represents the black lives that have been lost. What's interesting about this board, you have black and black, In order to play chess, you have to have opposite colors. There's
Yes.
no opposite colors here, so nobody could move. So I call this image, now what? You there, you at a standstill, nothing could be done. What are you going to do now? So I
Wow.
would share this image in all of the schools I would go to, and I would get people's attention with this right here. Because those that know, we could easily say it's a Kappa, it's a Sigma, but it represents a blood and a crypt. And it's my way of shock to get people's attention, because as one that's an advocate for saving lives, I have to create a particular body of work that captivates young people. So this is a visual poetry, and it's using photography as a visual language to reach particular people. So it's one of my strongest images. And again, it was based off a dream that I had, and I needed to come up with an idea to connect with young people. And again, it's what next? What now is that?
Wow. I love it. And last but not least on this wonderful journey. Oh man, you have given us a journey.
Those two.
Love this. Last night I was introduced to this photo, and it was at the gallery at the ICP event last night, and Jamel gave me the story behind it, and I was like, wow. I mean, this scene says so much. But go ahead, Jamel, share it.
This is a very interesting photograph because it's actually a crowded event and it's a rally going on. And, I'm there at the rally documenting it, and I observed this Hasidic Jewish gentleman walking around, and he's like playing musical chairs with the benches. And I'm watching this guy because he's out of place. It's nothing but Black folks there, and he's there. And I'm accustomed to seeing him either in Williamsburg or in Crown Heights, but he's in Fort Greene at this rally, but he's not involved in a rally. He's just walking around, and I'm watching him sit on these different benches, and I'm saying, this is kind of odd here. So I'm studying him, and my camera's locked and loaded, and I got this feeling that something's going to happen. And I'm seeing his brother sitting on this bench, and he might be maybe about 500 meters away, and he's walking towards him. And I said, this is not going to happen here. I don't believe this dude going to sit on this bench, because the brother sitting down ain't no slouch. He's official. He's an OG in every step of the
Yes.
I mean, totally, he's official. And all of a sudden, I got a feeling, and I'm locked and loaded. And sure enough, he sits down, and I squeezed the trigger, and I got that decisive moment as soon as they looked at each other. And the only title I thought about giving it once it was done was WTF, because that's the color got, like WTF. And I got it, and within a matter of seconds, he got up and moved to another seat.
Amazing.
It became a decisive moment for me, a very interesting photograph. I only took one frame, and so I was able to get it. And it's been in a couple of shows right now. The first show was ever exhibited and was called Love and Hate. And I submitted it, and it was exhibited for the very first time. So I'm really happy that the International Center of Photography deemed it a quality street photograph, and it's in that show. So it's going to garner more attention. And it's just it's a part of my creative process. I look for those opposites attract type of moments to create. And unlike my traditional pose work, this is truly a decisive moment. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. That's right. That's right. That's right. You got a military man in the house. That's right. That's a good term for it, rather than straight WTF, because I didn't want to create conflict. So what I do now, I call it When Two Worlds Meet. And that's a part of the series I created called When Two Worlds Meet. So it's dealing with that whole opposite. But this is one of my classic, most recent photographs, actually, too.
It is so good. Elise says she loves WTF. There was a couple of questions we're going to summarizing. Well, first of all, man, this is before we go to the Q&A. Well, let me go to Q&A quick. It was just a couple of them. It was a couple. If you have a question, put the Q and then put the question. But I saw here, David Mascaro said, may I ask, what was your experience was like in the service? Did you feel racism, or was it a good experience? I have heard both good and bad from many veterans I photographed.
Wow. My experience in the military was deep, because I went in there as a conscious person, and wow. I did a lot of reading in the military, and it made me very revolutionary. and I listened to revolutionary music. Because when I got over there, it was deep, you know. And I have to break it down. My introduction to Germany was insane when I got to my unit, because the war in Vietnam had just ended. There's a lot of dudes that was in Vietnam that was still in. There was a lot of racial conflict going on that people don't know about, because again, it's a microcosm society where you put everybody together. And I encountered racism in basic training, you know, as a new jack, you know, in terms of just things that people from the South would say, white Southerners. So it made me a certain way. So when I got over to Germany, I'll never forget, I'm going in the mess hall and two brothers walked by off duty. And this stayed in my mind, and like, wow, this is what I'm dealing with. And a brother had on a jacket that might have said Vietnam 1972 to 1975. The back of the jacket, it had the map of Vietnam. And the matter of fact, the front of the jacket had the map of Vietnam. The back of the jacket was a Black Panther, the animal, with a white rabbit hanging out of his mouth with blood dripping down the side. And these brothers were dapping. And the dap is dignity and pride. And if we're going through the motion, and as a soldier walked by, an officer, they act like they had a grenade and went boom. And that was my introduction to what's going on in Germany. One of the things I learned early on was, if you want to study the frequency of a bass, look at the graffiti in the latrine, the bathroom. And when I went in the bathroom, kill all niggas, I hate niggas, WTF, WFTA, in the bathroom. So I knew that I had a problem in my unit. The Klan went active in my unit. And one of the things I did when I got established, I got my crew together, and I wanted to know who was writing this graffiti in this bathroom. And I matched the handwriting in the bathroom with a particular room. And I rolled up with my crew, knocked on the door, opened up the door, boom, giant Confederate flag, the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. And these guys were in it. They had Black Panther rooms. One of the things that stays in my mind about my military experience that was terrible was the heroin epidemic that we had that people don't know about. Heroin was major. I don't know if it was the Russian that pushed the drug on the base, but a lot of people were dying off of heroins. Drugs were abundant, mainly hash, heroin, mandrakes. It was all over. You had two things going on. You had drugs, and you had the old timers were alcoholics. So there was a lot of racism that was there, because you bring us all together.
Yes.
Our problem was the fact that we didn't have sergeants that kind of like try to put that stuff to rest. You know what I mean? Nobody knew how to address that problem. And that's why I want to do a movie about that experience, because I want to show what if. One of my fondest memories of being in the Army was going into a room where that did not exist. And I'll never forget, because it's all about where you from. So when I got there, they said, yeah, you got a homie from New York in room 205. So I remember going into that room, and I met a brother from New York. And within that room, these dudes were playing cards, listening to Steely Dan and then Earth, Wind & Fire. And it was peace. You had a Hawaiian, you had a white, you had a Black. They were all together, and they had that bond. And I thought that was really special. And that stayed with me. That was the room that gave me hope, because they came together, but there was a division. Of course, you're going to connect with people that you identify with. West Coast going to be West Coast, East Coast going to be East Coast. So there was a lot of tension going on. And as I got older, my ideas started to change. But during that process, I was introduced to the Black Arts Movement, George Jackson, Attica, different events that took place in the military, because what people don't know, right after Attica, there was a racial tension in Vietnam. And they had a jail in Vietnam called Long Binh Jail, where a lot of Blacks served, were at. 90% of the jail were Blacks in Vietnam, mind you. They weren't POWs, they were soldiers that were locked up. So there's a lot of racial tension going throughout Germany too, and throughout military bases in general that people don't know about. So music kind of like brought us together, because again, I got turned on to Steely Dan, and and you start to embrace different types of music and culture. But if you had a lot of whites that never saw Blacks before, and they would tell you straight up, my daddy told me you never take any instruction from a Black man. Man, you come from Alabama, Mississippi, you know what I mean? It was a lot. And I stirred things up, and I didn't understand the pain that I created during Black History Month. And it was one of the worst decisions I made during my time in the service, trying to educate people. But I'm 17 years old, and for Black History Month, I put a picture up of a lynching. I'll never forget, a lot of brothers got upset with me behind that. But I wanted to shock value, because a lot of times for Black History Month, they were just partying, eating what they call soul food. Wow. I wanted to provoke thought. But I think about that wasn't really a wise move, because it only furthered the divide. So that's why, again, I got to go on to do a mini series about my time over there. and if things were different, because I created a situation where you had NCOs, non-commissioned officers that all served in Vietnam, and they were across the color line, but they all got along because they had each other's back. When I went in, I went in during a time in which the Ku Klux Klan was on a major recruitment drive to build up their ranks amongst military personnel. So we had a problem there. It was really a big issue, and brothers wasn't going for it because a lot of them had experienced that before. So it's just a different black man. And imagine now you have Klansmen, white supremacists that hate blacks that are in the military and in all different aspects of leadership. And you have to figure that out. So I was during a very difficult time, and I was a rebel, and what intensified it was the music I listened to, because I started getting into Gil Scott-Heron. I got into Steel Pulse. I got heavily into reggae music because reggae music spoke to my heart. And when Steel Pulse came out, Hydro Revolution and Ku Klux Klan and George Jackson, I used to blast that music, So it was a very difficult time, but I mastered it, and I'm glad that I was able to survive.
Here's another question, and this one's from Amparo. She says, what do you think about AI and the impact on photography?
I embrace AI. I can't wait to learn it, because the photographs that I didn't take, now I'm able to create and bring them into life. So I appreciate the technology, because I'm an artist. And what I do, there's a lot of photographs that I wasn't able to take. So I have artists that paint for me now. Images like this is a painting that a young man just did for me of a brother and sister I met on the train back in the 80s, and I never took a picture. So I would photograph them years later, and I wanted to recreate the image in which I missed. So this painting painted for me. So the AI technology is something I want, because I can go back and create these images in the military, things that I've experienced. So I absolutely love it as a creative process. And I want to learn it because so much is in my mind, and I want to bring those ideas out. So all forms of photography, I want to explore. I'm new to digital photography. It took me a while to get a digital camera. But now I got it because I was a traditionalist. So I embrace all forms of photography. As long as it's uplifting, inspiring, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I photographed an event yesterday at Verizon, and it was for the small business gathering, and they took us through. Well, they took the audience. I was photographing the whole event, but I was paused because they did a whole segment on AI, and part of it was photography, and it was showing how this AI was able to take old photos and restore all the pixels and create the photo that you thought you lost. And now you can get these beautiful photos of what should have been or may have been lost over time. And AI is here to stay. And I say AI is my best friend. I love AI. I love chat. I love all this stuff. It helps me to do this stuff that I do online. AI is not our enemy. AI is a tool. Now, just like with every other tool in the world, there are some people that use tools for bad situations, but most of us will use these wonderful tools for positive, situations.
Yeah, my only concern is copyright infringement. People taking your images and recreating them for their own. So that's a concern of mine. But aside from that, I want to master it where I could just do it myself. So I want to beat those folks that might look at my work and recreate it. I like when people paint my work, but AI is a concern on that level, where people could just hijack your images and recreate it to what they want, and then put their name on it. So it has its pros and cons.
Here's another question. It says, my question, Jamel, who will play you in the movie of your life?
I got to say, Mahershala Ali. I like him as an actor, as a person, and it's funny that you said that, because he would have to be the one. I really appreciate that.
You've thought about this, I see.
I have. It's come to me, and I don't want it. I really don't want it. I don't, because if anything, he'd be the cameo as a photographer, because I did write a really dynamic movie, and I'm in the background taking the pictures. So with all my iconic pictures, you're going to see them come to life with a photographer doing it from the side. But I have the main character. I don't want to be the central person. I don't want it to be about me directly. I want it to be more about the people I photograph. But I will have somebody in the background with a camera documenting all the iconic photographs. And I just think that Mahershala would be the one,
Wow. Here's another question. And if you
Good
have a
question.
question, make sure you bring it out because we're going to close up in a moment. How do we acquire Jamel's? Oh, there you go. How we acquire Jamel's prints?
DM me. Hit me with a DM, and we could speak about that. So that's the
Awesome.
best one. You could DM me if you want any other questions. If you want to continue the conversation as time progresses, I'm willing to connect with people on a one-on-one and continue to build. I will be doing a book signing, same place that we met, Ron, last year, on
Yes.
Sunday the 29th with Powerhouse. I'll share. I passed the information with you earlier, where I'll be signing some copies of my books. And if you guys get a chance, come to ICP, check out the show. Who are in the New York area, that would be great. We are here, Scenes from the Street. The show's going to be up until January, and I'm accessible. You know what I mean? I'm here to build and help other people grow. I'm still new to this trade, so I'm still trying to figure things out. But again, I want for my brothers and sisters, I want for myself. So if I can inspire anyone, I'm here to do that. And I stress that everyone in the audience consider grabbing up the photographs of their aunts and uncles, their grandparents, capture those images, digitize them, preserve them, and let's keep the idea of the family photo album tradition alive, because it means a lot, and so much of that is being lost right now. And at the same time, it's important to interview the elders within the family because they are dying out, and extract that important information.
Yes.
And my father-in-law just passed away. He was in World War II. I'm thankful that I had an opportunity to have extensive conversations with him about his time in the military, so it's all on record. So interview not only the elders within your family, but the elders within your community. It's a great subject to document, and it's important. It'll make so much sense later on.
Here's another question from Amparo. She says, can you explain the pics in your background?
Sure. The young lady with the camera is Alicia Keys, and she's holding Luis Mendez camera. And it was a photo shoot I did with Culture Magazine, where I photographed Alicia Keys and Swiss Beats for the very first time for the cover of Culture Magazine.
Wow.
Two wonderful individuals. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to honor photography, and it was based off a photograph that Gordon Parks did of Eldridge Cleaver and his wife Kathleen. So it was a remix. So Alicia had the afro on. So I had Luis Mendez on deck with his camera, and I wanted to do something special. And so I got Mendez's camera, put it in Alicia's hand, and boom, she got the shot.
Wow.
So the photograph behind me of the car is that iconic picture by James Van Der Zee called "The Man and Woman in a Raccoon Coat." So I purchased that from the wife of James Van Der Zee because his work was very, very, very instrumental in my growth and development coming up. The photograph above the globe is Gordon Parks, a self-portrait that was given to me by the Gordon Parks Foundation as an award for my contributions to humanitarianism and documentary photography.
Wow. Oh, nicely. Anthony says, I was excited to see your work in the Giants exhibition. Do you travel with your exhibition outside of New York?
I used to travel extensively for the past 20 years. To be honest with you now, I'm really drained. I've had a great career since back in the days dropped. I traveled throughout the globe. I've shown in Ethiopia, Korea, Japan, France, Germany, London, Brazil. I've had a really great career. At this stage in my life, I'm slowing down, and I'm redirecting all of my time and energy towards organizing my archive right now. To me, time is of the essence. There's a lot of work that got to be done. As we move into 2025, I feel compelled to move harder than ever before in my life. Again, I have 3 major books coming out next year, and I think that they're going to serve as a form of visual medicine, and I have to say, dealing with Trump, when Trump first started talking about running for president, I realized that it was a race against time. I was confident that he was going to win, and that pushed me as an artist to use my platform, my voice, and every opportunity afforded to me to use art as a form of how can I say this here? As a weapon to counter what he was doing and to bring people together. Because what I found with my art shows, it brings people together, as you witnessed last night. So I'm creating a lot of shows now to bring the artists together, because I do believe that the artist can change this narrative. You know, there's that Bible proverb, the harvest is ripe, but the labors is few. And I believe that artists, if we use our voice to address issues that are close to our heart, we can make a difference in this world globally. It's not just the black artist, but I've been fortunate to meet artists around the world who are concerned about the world. So in all of my travels, I get a chance to engage people in conversation and break down what my images represent and break down who I am. Because I'm bigger than a photographer. I'm a person who's concerned. I'm a concerned citizen in the world, and the camera has been my compass, has led me to these different spaces. So I don't travel anymore. You know, like the show is up now in Atlanta, and it's going to travel throughout the country. I might go to different spaces, but right now my main priority is my archive. It is a race against time. I've lost over 200 people since 2019, and I got to get my body of work organized. My objective now. I was greatly inspired by the movie, The Book of Eli with Denzel Washington. That's the story of my life. When one of my students told me to watch it and I would see myself, I understood what he was saying. So that movie represents me at this stage as I get older. I'm striving now to put all my books into institutions. And they're going into collections, they're going to libraries. And as I age, because I've done as much as I can photographically. If I never take another photograph again in my life, I'm good because I have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of images. I have within me enough to make 10 more books, 10 comprehensive books with no problem on 10 different themes. So again, it's a race against time as I get older to get that work in the institutions. So I really have no desire to travel anymore. If I want to travel, I travel spiritually in revisiting images that I've taken in different countries.
Yeah. Oh man, you have yeah, I'm the same way. I said time is running out and we have to do all we can to preserve these moments and to archive. This is what this is about. You know, I said doing these Wisdom Wednesdays and interviewing photographers and bringing their information to the forefront is because there needs to be a place to archive all of these amazing photographers that in a lot of cases will never get to be heard or never be their work will never be shown, or they are here and they don't have the opportunities. But this is a good space to elevate people, and I love that.
I like to say too, I want to thank you and your various guests that you have on a regular for the great work that you're doing. You are incorporating photography and politics. And they go hand in hand. So I really salute you. I gain a wealth of knowledge from all the discussions that you have. I'm grateful for your audience. Many of them have become my good friends now. So you are doing really important work, and you give me a great sense of hope, because there's times in my life when I look at what's going on, I feel a sense of hopelessness. But your program reassures me that there's people out there who are concerned and they're using their voices to make the world a different place. So I salute you for that. I thank you for putting Russell Fredericks on. Because that made a difference in his life. You answered my call. I reached out to you in desperation, and you gave him a platform that really helped to reinvigorate his spirit. So you're doing really important work, and I'm thankful for the friendship, and I'm thankful for the platform.
Oh, thank you, Jamel. You know, when you showed up, I was like, oh, Jamel's in the audience. Jamel's here. And you have truly become a brother. You become a friend, a brother, an inspiration, encourager. And there's so many great words. I mean, I can just go on the list. And but this, man, where can people find you? I have here for people that could. We've talked, and I was not going to stop. There was no time limit on this moment with you, and I just wanted to just make sure that we were able to just really give it our all and just share. You can find Jamel's on his Instagram page. Jamel is always posting. He is a poster. He shares so much. When you go to his page and you go to his stories in the morning or in the evenings, he has music with them. He gives you all the old Motowns and all kinds of stuff. But I love his page. His page is like his books. It takes you through time.
It's a reflection of my heart. the collaboration with music and photographs really mean a lot to me because it helps you to look at the image longer and then process the song and how it relates to the image. So music has played a great role in my journey, from the album covers to the artists such as Gil Scott-Heron, Marvin Gaye, and so many others that really helped me in my growth and development, musically over the years. So I thank you.
Also, you can find his work. You can go to his website. His website is JamelShabazz.photography.com, and you can check him out there as well, which is, man, this, I could go on. We could go for hours. This is like, to me, this is like just hanging out, sitting down, just on the porch. When we were growing up, we used to sit on the porch or sit on the stoop.
Right.
And just talk for hours. My friends growing up, we would just hang out on the stoop. We would hang out with the older people in the neighborhood and just sit on the stoop, listen to their stories, listen to their journey, listen to what was going on. And that's how we grew as young people. And my last question to you, if there's a 14, 15, 16-year-old that is saying, I want to be a photographer, and you had a particular group of words that you wanted to share with them, what would you say to that 14, 15, 16-year-old?
Out to that person to focus on issues that are close to your heart, that really resonate with you. If you have a particular concern about violence, pollution, elders, focus on that. Carry your camera everywhere you go. Have it not in the bag, have it out, out, cap off, set, and study the greats. Study photographers that inspire you and learn about their process and what led them on their way. And I think that'd be very helpful. Read Choice of Weapons by Gordon Parks to understand his journey. Because it wasn't easy for him. So read A Choice of Weapons, carry your camera everywhere you go. Think about themes, because I think that themes give you balance. It gives you clarity. A lot of times people got cameras, but they don't have any idea what to shoot. But when you have themes and say, I'm going to focus on twins, mothers and daughters, people with their pets, you have greater focus and clarity, and like I said, keep that camera everywhere you go. Study books. I spent a lot of time in both the library and bookstores analyzing the work of other photographers to understand what their creative process is. And I think with that, you would be a right place. It has to become, to me, photography is a way of life. I live it every day. The camera is an extension of my eye. And when you keep it with you, you'd be surprised what you see. And not only is it an extension of my eye, it's also a compass. So if a young 16-year-old kid has a camera, it becomes a compass. It will guide you. It would open up your third eye and allow you to see things that you didn't even know existed.
Okay, my friend, this is, I don't want to end.
And for the audience in New York, you come to one of my events. I got books I'm trying to get rid of. I'm not going to mail them, but you come to some of my events, I get them out to you personally because I got hundreds of books in my house. They need to go. So I'm going to work on, as I approach my 50th anniversary next year, I actually want to do another great photo shoot in Brooklyn and bring people together before the year closes. So I would love to impart some of these books to you as a gift of gratitude. So please stay in contact with me, and I would love to meet you in a one-on-one. And I'm going to try, and perhaps, Ron, you could help me. I would love to just do a part 2 of that for World Photography Day in the park, because it was a missing element that I felt bad about. And if we would have had that, it would have completed the situation. And that was a cipher. And a cipher is something we had back in the old days, where we got in a circle and each individual got in the center and they explained who they were and some of their goals and objectives and concerns. So I'm thinking about doing that before the year closes out in that same park across the street from the Brooklyn Museum. And from there, I would like to give out my books as gifts. I got a number of them here that I have no need for. I'd rather get them in the hands of people that can appreciate them.
I would love some of those books, says Mimi. and Mike Young says, let's do it. Let's do it, Mike Young.
Do it, Mike. We need you on here. He's one of the greatest photographers out there. He's a humble man. And one of the gifts of photography is that I met him on the path, in addition to yourself and so many others. But Michael Young is doing some really incredible work, and he's just gifted. So yes, Mike, let's do it. Let's get on this program night for next Wednesday, Motivation Monday. Motivation Wednesday, we need you here.
There you go. I told Mike we got to get him on the calendar. He is an incredible photographer and a beautiful brother.
Definitely.
You can feel his love. He just has this some people, you know, there's some people in life that have an aura, and everyone has an aura, they say, but there are some auras that are stronger than others. And when you encounter Mike, he's just such a beautiful man. So I cannot wait for you guys to meet Mike. We're going to get him on the calendar. We got next week, we're going to have another special guest. I met last night, and Jamel was like, Ron, come over here. You got to meet her.
Good. So we're going to get Vanessa on. Great.
Yeah, she's going to come on next week, and we're going to be talking today. And she's a sweetheart, and that's how we build community. We build community with each other. We build by sharing each other's work. We build by acknowledging one another, and we build by embracing one another.
That's right.
Okay, my brother, this is it. I'm going to have to let you go. And guys, I'm thankful for you all tuning in to this amazing interview with Jamel Shabazz. He has given us so many gems today. So many. Guys, I would suggest to you that if you know someone that's a photographer, or you have a young person that is in your life that wants to be a photographer, this is on YouTube, so you know what you can do. All you need to do is copy and paste the link, send it into your Gmail or your email to your friends or on your Instagram, and let them know about this interview. And Jamel does not do interviews often. Well, so I am blessed and honored.
And I appreciate your audience. So many wonderful, wonderful people. So I'm really grateful for them. So it's just about me connecting with them and just giving them a little clarity on my journey. So again, I thank you, and I thank your audience for tuning in.
Thank you so much. Okay, guys, you know what we do. We go out into the world, and what do? We live life like we mean it, and we focus on what matters. Guys, thank you for joining me today. And I am looking forward to tomorrow. We'll be talking politics. You know how we roll. Tomorrow's a political day. And we're going to be talking. There's a whole lot in the news. So we'll be doing that tomorrow. Good. And so, guys, thank you so much for joining me. And Jamel, again, thank you so much for sharing your time so graciously with us. And it means the world to me. And I know it means the world to so many people here.
Thank you, Ron. We'll continue blessings, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good, guys. Okay, we're out of here.